All right, good afternoon. Hopefully everybody's awake. My name's Mark Denham. I'm the SE manager for Zerto. I live here in Nashville and cover the Southeast. And today I've got the honor to be up here with Mary Andrea, who is lead DR architect for United Airlines. And I think everybody saw them up on the stage yesterday. And I'm really excited. And when I first came to Zerto, I covered like from here all the way to Canada. And United was one of the first customers that I got to work really close with as they initially bought the product and initially planning and rolling out. And it's been great to watch how much they've grown and how far they've come with Zerto and how their DR program has progressed. So today the title is about testing. It won't just be about testing, but we really, and this isn't going to be a real technical real technical session, but I really kind of want to walk through, if you think about from a business perspective and how, as we evolved from disaster recovery to more of what you heard a lot here around IT resilience, and really what's driving that from a digital transformation perspective, and just how we've evolved in the space. And then I'll kind of transition that into for Maria Andrea to kind of share what they've done at United, because it's been a great story and it's been fun to watch. So the first thing, we talk a lot about unplanned outages, and you think about the history of disaster recovery. The main thing we think about is tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, and it was really, and that was kind of what we've always planned for. But if you think about where we are today, security, ransomware, there's so many other things out there. And, historically it was pretty much planning for a full site disaster. So I've shut down the data center, declare a disaster. But as we evolve and start looking at IT resilience, it's really grown, and it's a bigger picture that we have to look at. So I think we all know, and this is what we've historically thought about, the disasters, and now into ransomware. The other thing, however, is planned outages. And I know you hear this a lot in our messaging, mergers, acquisitions, data center moves, or cloud strategies. And there's very few customers I know that we talk to that don't have some type of cloud strategy. And I know even, I've been here about 2.5 years, and initially, we didn't really talk a lot about cloud. It was kind of a new feature we had to move to the cloud. And I would say for the first year, it wasn't a part of a lot of the proofs of concepts or other things that we did. But I would say today, most of the customers we deal with, cloud is part of the discussion. And most of the proof of concepts we do has a cloud component to it. So if you think about the digital world that we live in now, the expectations have really changed. So we've got these unplanned things that can happen to take us down. We have planned outages that really are advancing the business, whether merger, acquisition, or whatever. But the reality of our customers, we live in a digital world, and the expectation is that systems are available 24/7. And I know in talking to Maria Andrea, getting ready for this, she was kind of describing for me from this perspective and kind of this digital transformation. If you think about United Airlines, I was thinking about, when people check in online, and she was making the point to me that it's from the beginning, when they start planning flight schedules for the next year, that's an application that's doing that. And then that's going to feed into maintenance systems, to aircraft planning systems, to crew systems, and then eventually get to the point where you're selling tickets and boarding passes, people getting on the plane. And so I think it's a great example. And for those of you, I know I've been traveling for work for 25 years. And if you think about the world that we live in today and the paperless world we live in from a travel perspective, or where we were then compared to the way it is now, it's a totally different world. And I think airlines are great examples of that and how they've really transformed into this digital world. But at the end of the day, whether it's something unplanned or planned, our customers still want applications to be up. That's still the expectation, and that's really what we talk a lot about that term digital transformation, but that's really what it's all about. So what does this new digital world, what does that mean to the business? And it really changes everything, both from a people perspective and from a technology perspective. If we just take disaster recovery or IT resilience as an example, it really changes the way that we have to look at it. I think we also know that it also gives us new opportunity for new revenue, to go into new businesses. But at the end of the day, from a people process, and for those of us that live in the IT world, it's totally different than it used to be. And it's really being driven by these new applications and the fact that they've got to be on all the time. So now let's focus, again, specifically around disaster recovery. And I know I've been working in this industry for 35-ish years. And I know DR was something that we always talked about, but whether it was, like I said, a DR scenario, a backup scenario, we lived in a world that was pretty much 9 to 5 when I started. And we had backup windows, we had weekends. I remember I was in the Air Force for 8 years. And even with that, we would take weekends and take all the systems down. I was working at SAC headquarters, and we would take all the systems down for the weekend to recable or to install new equipment or do something. So even in that world of the military, we could take a 24, 36-hour outage. But obviously, that's not the case today. Again, going back to the new digital world, the applications are expected to be up all the time. And at the end of the day, applications are the business. And if you think about for an airline, that last bullet there on image is everything. And especially in the world of social media, if you take an outage, it can drastically really impact your company and the business. It was interesting. I'll share a story. And one of the things with United, which they had a great process for how they went through rolling out this disaster recovery plan. They funded it well, and they started off in the infrastructure, and then gradually, when they figured out tools they were going to use and processes to actually build the networks, they began bringing in the application owners. And I'll never forget the day we were at Willis Tower in Chicago, and actually I was getting ready to present. So another vendor was presenting to these application owners about how their product was going to be used in the DR plan, and I was waiting in the wings to come on, and the CEO of United walks in the room. And so he's just standing in the back of the room listening for about 20, 30 seconds, and then he just stops the guy and said, okay, this is too technical for me, but they told me this meeting was going on, and I just wanted to come in and share with you how important what you're doing is. And this was actually the day when, I think it was Hurricane Harvey that hit Houston, and I think Maria Andrea said she was actually down in Houston when this was going on. And so the hurricane's hitting, the airport's shut down, data centers are down, and he walks in and he basically said, look at what's going on right now in the weather, and think about the impact that has on our business, because planes aren't flying, and that's why what you're doing is so important. And I just thought that was neat, kind of that visibility. And I think, he's a CEO that understands an outage in IT, and we've seen that over and over with airlines. When it goes down, flights get canceled, people are upset, and it really impacts the image. So I just thought that was a neat story that, an executive at that level, the importance that he put on disaster recovery. And I think that's reflected in the progress that United has made. So now let's dig a little deeper and think about, kind of where we've come as far as requirements for disaster recovery. Again, in days past, you would have top-tier applications where, you wanted to go up as quick as you can. And I think probably a lot of us have lived through the days of shipping tapes and, if I'm going to declare a disaster, it's going to take time to go restore data, get up and running. But then there were other applications, lower tier applications, that weren't even included in the disaster recovery plan. I know before I got on the vendor side, I was an IT director at a university, but I had the open system non-mainframe, and of course the important stuff was on the mainframe. And I'll never forget, we had a program for disaster recovery for the university, and I wasn't invited to the meeting. And it's like, I went to one of the other directors, so why wasn't I invited? Oh, what you do is not important. If we can get the mainframe back up and running, that's what will be important. So, I'm going, okay, but, I'm not included in the program. But I think that reflects kind of the world that we came from. And the reality was that certain businesses, it's probably back-end systems, maybe billing systems or whatever, but a lot of the interaction with customers was upfront people as opposed to online. And so the reality was that, businesses could live for some period of time if they had a few critical systems up. There was a period of time that they could survive. But again, the reality today is, that's changed. So if you step back and think about it, when you think about disaster recovery, obviously recovery's in that. And to me, I'm thinking about, okay, recover data probably means I'm going to go get tapes, I'm going to bring that back, and then I'm going to have to do something to get those applications back up online. So I think what we really have to do is to make a transition from thinking about recovery to thinking about availability. And it's not that I want to recover an application, but I want to build an infrastructure that's going to guarantee maximum availability that I can get. I think the other thing here is the concept of restore. And if we think about, again, tape backup in the days of shipping tapes to SunGard, flying to Philadelphia, going in the data center, restoring tapes, and then bringing a systems back online to this concept of resume. And if you think about Zerto, we get in conversations right now, like with traditional Zerto, where I've got a journal, I've got a replica disk, so I'm replicating that data, it's going to be on production disk. And we always talk about how much space is it going to take, and we think about the cost, which we have to, but we want that on production storage because we want to be able to resume the application. We want to be able to resume the business in the event that something happens. And so to get out of this mindset of, I'm going to restore a system, do something to restore data, do something to get the application back online. So I want to move to this thought of, I just want to resume operations as quick as possible, because that is the business. So if you think about that and what has changed in technology to help us make this move from disaster recovery to IT resilience. Again, the old world that I keep talking about is really the concept of active-passive. And like I said, it's interesting, a provider like SunGard, who's a good partner of Zerto today, and there's a lot of other cloud service providers out there that provide DR as a service. And the old days, again, it was you ship your tape there, and when you declare a disaster, if they've got the capacity, you take the time you've stored, you come up and run. But today with Zerto, we're replicating in that data is residing on production disk, and I have that concept of resume. So even in that world of somebody like a SunGard who has evolved as a company to this kind of model from the old days of shipping tapes and flying to Philadelphia when you need to do that. I mentioned tape there. That was primarily the way we did DR, but today we're living in a hybrid cloud world. And I know a lot of the customers that we will talk to, there's different scenarios. There's a lot of customers that have 2 data centers, or they have a data center and a colo. And they now start to look at, well, is cloud, is that a possibility for a target, for my disaster recovery? I know there was actually a bank that I was dealing with that had 2 data centers that were both in Florida, and they get really nervous about hurricanes down there, and especially this time of year as we're heading into hurricane season. And, they were a small bank, and they're looking at it going, how do we do this? Is it an option to shut down one of those data centers and go to a cloud of some kind? And it's going to be located somewhere outside the state of Florida. But again, that's another option. I think another thing we'll see are small companies that really could not afford disaster recovery. But even if they're a small company and they need that resilience if they're going to stay in business. So we see a lot of those today that, like with cloud service providers, DR as a service, small companies, there's a lot of them doing that. And again, these are companies that in the past, they couldn't justify, a disaster recovery plan or a site. They just couldn't afford it. But today, if they're going to stay in business, they have to be able to do that. We're dealing in a heterogeneous world. Again, I spent 19 years at EMC, so, we sold a lot of storage replication. Don't throw anything at me. But we sold a lot of storage replication, but, we loved that because you had to have a homogeneous environment. You had to have a like-for-like storage if you're going to be able to do that replication. But the reality of the world that we're in today, just, number one, from a cost perspective, people want options. They don't want to be locked into one hardware vendor. Another big one, like mergers and acquisitions. You buy somebody else, they have another type of storage. How do I live in this heterogeneous world? And, so that's people are looking for the simplicity of a tool that's going to be able to work across platform. And obviously that's something really, the founding of Zerto, that's what we're really focused on. Another thing is in testing. Again, if you've lived through that world of traditional disaster recovery, where maybe you do a test or two a year, but you would probably plan for a month before you would go try to execute that test. And obviously, that was usually done as a checkbox to say, yeah, we can do it. But in the event of a real disaster, you're probably not going to have a month or two to plan that event. So I think a lot of people, you'd ask them, could you really recover? And I think most people say, I don't know, maybe, and how long is it going to take? I'm really not sure. But really moving, again, to support this new world that we're in, to be able to do constant testing. One of the things with United, I think you said in the last year and a half, 2 years, they've executed like 13 major DR tests. And so to have the flexibility, and one of the things that I've seen them do, they took a very iterative approach to the way they tested. So, and with that, Zerto is not the only replication tool they're using, because they've got virtual environments, which is a majority of the systems. They've got legacy Unix, they've got mainframe, and what else?
Oracle that we're using DataGuard. We also have a SQL Physical that we are using Double Take.
Okay.
And some business TIBCO servers that we are using Veritas Volume Replication and also for IBM MQ. So we have, name it, we have it.
Yeah, and so the key there is, that's a very complex process, and they're not to a point yet where they can get to just this one tool that does everything. But like I said, Zerto does the biggest because the virtual servers, that environment's the largest that they have. Oh, and by the way, they've got Hyper-V and VMware. So they're using Zerto for all that. But the thing that I saw them do is they initially rolled out their DR program was, and I actually spent 2 or 3 different nights, their first test, went to Chicago and spent the night in the data center. But they started off by, let's build the networks, and let's just make sure we can bring the network up. Then the next thing they did, they took one server out of each of those categories. So a physical server, a virtual server, something on the mainframe, so to test each. And they made sure they could fail over and access a single server, from each category. So they know they got the network right. And then from there, they started bringing up more servers. Then, like I said, I was out there for the training. When we brought the applications in, they began to bring the applications in. They began to look at, now, how do we test, different data feeds into the systems. So it was a very iterative process that they went through. But I think that was key to get to where they are today and the size of the DR program that they have. And again, to be able to do that, if you were going to do 1 or 2 tests a year, it's going to take you several years to get that done. But they've really come a long way, I know, in the last year and a half or so since I started working with them. Do you have anything else to add to that? Or?
Well, yeah, in total, since we started, we have done 13. Now we have a calendar. It still takes time to plan it, but it's because you need to have your application team ready for that.
Right.
Not because of the infrastructure. We got that.
Right.
But it's making sure that you have the quorum, that the people, they might have another release or this new feature. So So that's why it takes us time, is to get the commitment from the app owners so that they can attend. We test about 50 applications on each one of those tests.
Okay. So IT resilience, again, you hear that term a lot. I just wanted to share this slide. This is actually a category that Gartner has now defined and recognized. What do I hear? Is that me? Oh, I thought I had my phone in my pocket was talking. But so it's really all about, close to continuous IT operation. Again, we're dealing in this world of heterogeneous environments. We want to get it. We want a tool that's going to be able to do multiple things. We want to converge that, make it as simple as possible. And again, we're no longer just planning for a full site outage, but we're thinking about cyber attacks. We're thinking about, even the ability to fail over individual applications. And I think another thing that I see in this space is I see a lot of people that want to evolve from, like I said, they get away from active-passive to more active-active data centers, but then get to really to where they're doing application mobility. I know we have some customers that have multiple data centers, and they'll just move it to another data center and run for a week. And ultimately, that's how they know that they're going to be able to fail over if they have to. If this data center goes away, I know I can run there. But again, I think it's an iterative process to get there. And if you think about how Zerto does it, and I think the approach they're taking, they currently test in the bubble network. So they create the separate network, they fail into that. But I know when I was working before, and I think it's probably still your goal, to get to that point of mobility, yes, where you can just move the application and run it where you need to run it. And there was actually another story. There was another airline that I won't mention that was in the path of a hurricane in Florida. That's a Zerto customer, and all their key maintenance systems were running in Florida. They had another data center in Michigan, and the hurricane was coming in. I know the engineer on my team went in, sat with them, and they took it and they moved it to Detroit and rode through the hurricane. They didn't have the outage. So again, just an example of getting to that point of application mobility as opposed to the old world of kind of that active-passive data center. So digging deeper, some of the things within the technology again. So, obviously Zerto, continuous data protection. A lot of the customers we talk to, are doing snapshots. I'm sure most of you are using snapshots in some fashion. And the common thing I hear is, number one, it will impact my performance on those high I/O applications, databases, or I may have to cancel my backups because I can't get a snapshot because of that impact. So moving from that to continuous data protection, application consistency. Again, if you think about the old world of I've done a bunch of backups, there are different points in time, I'm going to restore those, but then to be able to get them running again, I'm probably going to have to do some work, roll forward, roll back to get to the single point in time. So if I'm going to really be able to execute on this idea of resuming the business as opposed to restoring, I really need that application consistency. So I know the data's there, it's production, and I can bring those systems up immediately if I need to. Like I said, I've had a lot of background in array-based replication. I think we all understand that, and kind of being locked in and needing the like for like. And again, I think that especially comes in I see most with mergers and acquisitions, and you buy a company, first thing you want to do is combine the data centers to cut cost. And if you've got different types of infrastructure, that can be a very difficult task. I know when I was at EMC, people paid us a whole lot of money just to move data around, even on our own systems. But again, the reality is you need that agility today to quickly move the data, get it to where you need, and keep systems up and running. And then, again, convergence of tool sets. I think you've heard a lot about that. Obviously, Rob talked a lot about it. And where the goal of Zerto is to get to a converged resiliency platform so that you can meet the traditional disaster recovery, keeping the business up and running, but then also be able to meet my compliance requirements with backup. And if we can do that by using continuous data protection or continuous data protection, get that data out of production, get the other copy of it, that's really the goal and where we're trying to go. So to kind of put the picture together, kind of what I've been talking about, that evolution. So if you think about the traditional disaster recovery where I backed up the tape, I put it on a truck, I sent it to usually to Philadelphia, to somewhere, and then I had the tape stored, and when I'm ready to go, I restore those and I resume, or I bring the applications up. I remember, like I said, I was at EMC right about the time we came out with SRDF, so the first storage-based replication, and that was a great leap forward. I mean, if you think about, obviously EMC was a very successful company, still is as part of Dell today, but that was really the technology that made EMC, that first intelligent storage array that was able to replicate data. But in all my years at EMC, the number of customers I saw that they replicated the data, they had it somewhere else safe, but if they really needed to recover it, they were doing a lot of manual work, they were writing scripts, there were a lot of things they were doing to be able to get the application up. And a lot of them just felt good about the fact they had the data somewhere else and it was protected. And so kind of this modern, what I'll call resilience ecosystem, and I think where we are today, this concept of multiple data centers, an active world where you're probably replicating in both directions. You've got the ability to move the applications where they need to be. And then again, this concept of resuming the business as opposed to having restore. And so moving toward this idea of just continuous availability, a business that's always up and running. And I've talked some other, obviously, about the cloud sites. And again, a lot of the people we deal with, probably a lot of you in this room, you're looking at some things I do on-prem, but it is a hybrid cloud world. And you're probably have some applications you're looking to put in the cloud. That's going to be the right place to do it. And this is really, I think, where we're going and where we see the world. I know, like I said, when I started out in IT, it was mainframe. I was an MVS system programmer. It was my first job back in the 80s. And I remember when open systems happened, and my first thing was, I've got to get out of the mainframe because I'm not going to have a job. We're not going to need mainframers anymore, so I went and learned Unix. But just like with that, we've still got mainframes today. It's a very hybrid world, and I think we're seeing the same thing with cloud. A couple years ago, we started talking about cloud, and it was everybody's going to move everything to the cloud. And now we live in a world today where we have cloud-born applications. We have people that are moving for IaaS for whatever business reason they have to run in the cloud, but then a lot of people that are running on-premise. And I think most of you probably see that in your businesses where you see a little bit of all of it. So it is a very hybrid world, and that's where we live, and I know at Zerto, that's what we're trying to do as far as building the tools to enable this type of world. And then, so what impact does this have from a DR planning and then DR testing? Again, because of the digital age we're in, it's got to be driven by the business requirements because applications are the business now. They're not just supporting the business. Understanding what you're protecting against. It's not just that my data center goes away, but it's, a cyber attack. It's maybe a partial data center outage where part of my applications, I had one customer several years ago here in Tennessee, and they had a water pipe that burst over like a row of 7 Symmetrix boxes. So we had we got a Bluebird deal that quarter because insurance had to buy them new arrays. But thinking about not just the full outage, but the partial outage, the cyber attacks, but what are all the things that I'm protecting against? Again, defining the right strategy, whether it's on-prem, whether it's going to cloud, whether it's going to a cloud service provider with DRaaS, what's going to be the right answer for this application? And then, actually, like I said, documenting the plan and putting it together. From a testing perspective, I think the main thing is we see evolving from kind of that mentality of stage DR test and, testing once or twice a year and really moving, active, passive, and really moving toward this environment where I can test continually, I can test, during the day. I don't have to take applications down, but really getting to a point where I can do that iterative testing because that's how I'm going to evolve my process. And that's one thing I'll let Maria Andrea share a little bit about. Kind of, we were talking this morning about that and kind of the things that they're learning now that they're 2 years in and the way they have to evolve that process. So with that, I think I've hit all this. We're gonna turn and talk a little bit more about what these guys have done at United. I think everybody here knows who United is. We saw them up on the stage yesterday. Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
All right. So I guess first of all, could you start off by just talking about the goals that you had when you started the program and kind of, tell the story, kind of how's it worked and where are you now?
Well, about 3 years, executive leadership said, okay, one of the big risks of the company is our information systems. We need to protect them because that's the data of our customers, that's the data for our planning, that's tech ops, that is airports, that's all over the place. So we are digital, we need to protect it. We had some level of high availability and we needed to enhance it, and that's why we started the DR program, okay? So we had it, but we needed to, okay, this is gold now. Our customers' data is gold. And that's how we started the DR program. And we look out for vendors and depending on the technologies that we needed to support, and that's how we came out with Zerto, because we had a mixed environment. We had Hyper-V and VMware. We are about 70 VMware and 30% Hyper-V. And then for the physical load, how do we do about those, okay? We're now on the trend on trying to virtualize more so we can get more on Zerto is by far the easiest one to manage, not because I'm standing here, but because I had to manage the other ones and I know it's painful. What else? We also understood that it was important not to bother our application owners. What do I mean by that? DR is not sexy. Our application owners want to do the new gadget, the new thing on the app. They want to do the new release for United.com. They don't want to spend time testing something that is already up and running. But it was important that they were part of it. So that's why we did so many infrastructure tests. Once we felt that we were mature, we said, okay, now we need your help. Because you're the ones that are going to tell us whether it's working or not. You're the ones that know your dependencies. So we did about 7 tests before we even brought on board the application owners. And part of a lot of the planning that we do before each test is not on the infrastructure as much as making sure that when we're bringing a group of developers to come to test, all their components are already in sync because you are constantly refreshing. You're constantly, okay, I'm in SQL 2008, I need to bring 2016, and I'm virtualizing now, it's in Zerto. So having that prep, that is an iterative process.
Right. How many data centers do y'all have, and how did you start? How did you decide where to start?
We took the one that was in the Hurricane Alley.
Okay.
And we said, okay, let's start with this one. And we did all or nothing, so we said all. Okay. We didn't go by tiers. We replicated everything with the different technologies. Now we are on the second phase, which the other largest data center.
How many total data centers does United have?
Large, only 2, because the other one we are moving it to so it's 2.5.
Okay.
There's one that, when we talk about the data center moves, those take a little bit longer, so
right.
It is moving into the other one in Chicago, which is the next phase of the project.
Okay. So this is some of the statistics around the size of the environment. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you grew to the size? Did you do it all at once, or?
No. So we did first what we did DR1, and what happens when you do a project, you take care of everything. You take care of taking all the VMs, all the SQL servers, all the Oracle, but then that doesn't happen overnight. That takes you about a year and a half to get it done. During that year and a half before we put here's the stake of the sun, this is it, this is when I'm going to replicate 1,600 VMs. On that year, we replicated another 400. Mm-hmm. No, we deployed another 400. We're like, oh, now we're far behind 400.
Right.
Let's do this one. And what we're trying to come up with the process is that making sure that the new VMs get automated and added to the DR, to the VPGs, so that we don't have those gaps that you turn around and there are 50 VMs that are unprotected because they are new. But we did a first project. Then we did what we call the catch-up project, because during that year and a half is when we were testing the new technologies and putting everything. And now is coming up with this automation So we can actually be on top of things and not 2 months behind.
So what are the things are you looking for from Zerto to do to the product to kind of help you
The
with that?
orchestration and the planning, because you lived through that.
Yes.
The first time around, it was
We built many spreadsheets, and we were guessing at numbers to try to figure out how
It's
to size
hard.
journals.
So that would be a big one, because right now when they deploy a new VM, we have analytics, we have with VR Ops, and we have a great team with Zerto, with Ryan. And he helped us saying, okay, this is the load. I think we can create a VPG for this, but that should be more automated, or I should have the planner telling me, okay, we've seen this VM, this is how you should do the sizing of the journal, or for your next DR exercise. Right now, what we do is we do 2 weeks of exercise. Okay, it's from Monday to the next Friday, but in the middle of it, we have to what we call refresh the journal. We stop the failover, and then we restart the failover on a Monday to make sure that I can do all my testing, because you cannot test 50 applications in 4 days. You need all the 2 weeks. So if the tool can help me sizing that scratch space, that would be really good. And also doing the VPG assignment. Yeah.
Right. So as a commercial, I think everybody heard in there that at 4 o'clock, I'm not sure which room it is, there is a session that Lee Kaminsky's doing on the Z Planner that's going to be integrated in the product. And I know that's one we talked about that you guys are really looking forward to helping you manage the environment. So also it says here that the testing phase went from 30 days to 2 weeks. And I think you said that's mainly application, making sure the applications people are ready to do their testing.
Yes, and also because we are constantly there's the organic growth, like we have United.com, we have 200 VM, oh no, we need to add capacity, put 20 more, but there is also the refresh. So when you're refreshing your new VMs are in 2016, you're adding them to new VPGs. Right. So it's like almost starting over. So when I finish the R program, now they are refreshing everything. So it's making sure that the new mobile VMs are added to the VPGs, and we bring them again to test. Right. Even though they already passed their test, well, you refresh, you need to go through the test again.
And I think that's the thing, if you think about IT resilience and the fact, going back to the slides at the beginning that talked about, okay, we're protecting for unplanned outages, but there are planned things that happen, and your infrastructure still has to be resilient through that. And I think these are great examples. It's not like, okay, here it is, I set up my DR program, it's all there, we're done. But that continues to change, so you've got to stay on top of it. And I think that's where getting back to that iterative testing. And that's what we talked about this morning, that you're looking at, okay, we're getting these gaps because there's new systems that come in, which goes back to that impact to the processes up front that I talked about.
Another important thing that we see is that even though this is not fun for them, for the application owners, they are getting it. Okay, at the beginning it wasn't fun, but now they're getting it, because now it's not the first time they're here. They've come already 3 or 4 times, so the testing are going a little bit faster.
Right.
And hopefully you will get to a comfort level, so if something happens, they know what to do.
Right.
That's another thing why we do testing, so that they are prepared if something happens.
Cool. So outcomes, where are you going from here? So how does United feel about where they are with the program now? And then again, what's moving forward? Where are you going?
Can speak for how I feel. I don't know if I have the clearance to say that it's United, but I think that we have made a long progress. I think that we need to start thinking more about in the cloud, okay? I know we have a cloud team looking already into that, and the leader on that team, he's the one that introduced Zerto to the company, so I'm sure that he has that in mind, and that's a portion that I wanna see through. The immediate need was, let's protect what we have on-prem, because we didn't have anything on the cloud.
Right.
Okay, we got this. Okay,
Right.
we're starting putting things on the cloud. Or should we put some of what is on-prem to the cloud? Those two things.
So what are you doing? I know on the slide here it talks about data migrations or data center moves. What are you doing around
So we have a very, very old data center. It's underground, and we're moving to the new data center, and that is a project that is going on, and the one that we're going to protect is the new one. So we really need to vacate the other one, because it's not worth DR in it. Okay.
Right.
On that one, we are looking into probably using Zerto. It's not fully that. It's one of the options that is on the table.
Moves. Okay. So again, hopefully, and I'll open it up if any of you have questions. But again, it's kind of the goal of Zerto is really to get that single IT resilience platform that's going to enable you to keep the business up and running, planned, unplanned, whatever happens. And again, it's I think at United, it's been really exciting to watch kind of the progress that they've made and moving toward that, especially being somebody that flies all the time. I hate sitting at airports with canceled flights, so it makes me feel better, when airlines are making this kind of progress from a resilience perspective. With that, are there any questions, anything anybody would like to ask?
Honestly, right now it's a one-way ticket. So right now we have today a one-way ticket. If we have to fall back, we don't even know if that's data center because it's Hurricane Alley would be there. We will be thinking in that moment probably in the one that is in Chicago, but right now replication is a one-way ticket.
There was another question.
Yeah, can you go back one slide?
Yep.
Sorry. Another one is back to when you talk about 6 terabytes of change rate, are you saying that there's a single application that you have that has 6 terabytes daily change?
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting 10 minutes RTO on that app?
That is the bigger offender that we have there. Wow. And it is session data. Customer session data. We're looking because even if it is 10, then when we're doing testing is when we run into issues and the journal and everything. So yeah, but it's one application. The others are not that bad.
Right. We have a similar size environment to you and the areas also. I'm just wondering. You said 13 tests. Is that all 2,000 VMs?
No. So we have about 2,000 VM, and then we have like 200 Linux Blade servers, and another 100 SQL servers, and superclusters for Oracle, and they all go. We fail them over, all of them, even if you are only testing these 50 applications, okay? Because you want to make sure that all the dependencies are there. We do know a lot of the dependencies, but there are also very many unknowns, to be honest with you. So we fail them over everything, the whole thing, the 2,000 servers, that are VMs, everything. The only thing that we don't fail over is the non-production, but everything that is production is fail over in what we call the bubble. And we stop the failover on a Friday night, and on a Sunday night, our guy from London goes and starts the failover test again, so that we can do another 4 days worth of testing.
Okay, there's one here.
I didn't actually have a question. I wanted to answer his question.
Oh, okay.
So Zerto has a built-in feature to reverse replicate
Yes.
when you fail over. So essentially, if your production data center was already up,
Right.
it'll just start doing that. And if the hurricane doesn't hit your data center,
You can come back, right.
Mm-hmm.
If it does, then you probably have bigger things to worry about.
Right.
So you said you have 2.5 data centers. So when that third data center in Chicago is up and running, you utilize the one minute?
Okay, so what I call the 2.5, the main data center. So we have our main where we have customer-facing application mostly, and then the other where we have many of the back-end, your flight planning, crew, whatever is on the other one. But there's another old data center, which is what I call the half, because we are vacating it. Okay, that's what I call it, a half, because we are vacating it. It's a true data center. It's just that we're not going to protect that one, because that one is supposed to go away by the end of this year and move into the large data center that is next door.
Okay, so you're replicating from that one into one of the other two.
We're right now replicating one of them here, and the other one will be replicating to another data center that I can't disclose. Sorry. I know we have a big pipe, like 40 gigs, and only for replication, so that wouldn't, but I don't know how much that one use. I would have to check it out.
40 gigs for all of your,
For replication between the main and the backup side.
A lot of data.
And we run a dedicated replication network. So when we go on the bubble, we log all routing through the data network, but replication keeps going.
And actually, that was
a complexity.
That was a lesson learned that we had getting through this, because initially they had set it up where they had the replication network, they had the VRAs talking via the replication network, and then they had the ZVMs talking through the production
Data
network.
Yeah.
And when they shut that down, the ZVMs quit talking when they went into the test, and everything went red. And everybody was in the data center. There were VPs there, and everybody's panicking. Oh no, what happened? And we figured out pretty quick. Well, the ZVMs quit talking, so the data's still replicating. It's still there. You're in the test bubble. But that was one of the lessons learned. So we had to come up with a way to modify the database and make it start talking over the other network. But
Yes.
that was an exciting night.
sorry to hog the questions, but so when you did your testing, how did you decide whether you were going to re-IP or do it to a new, keep the same IP?
Oh, that was like a 1.5 year conversation. We kept changing our minds every other month until network said, no, different IPs. That's it. We will keep the same name, of course, but different IPs. It was a call that the network team did at the end. Yeah. It is, and then what we do is change on the. It's very labor intensive coming into one of these tests because you have to have a separate info blocks in your bubble. Your DNS translation, we do a DNS script that knows how to do your VLAN pairing. If you have it in your main data center, this is your VLAN. What is the translation on the other VLAN? And it's very labor intensive. We have scripted a lot of it. But that was a requirement from the
And
network
that's what
team.
a lot of those early tests were. The infoblock guys were in there, and let's get that network right first. And then we start adding more servers and start adding the applications. Anything else? All right, just a reminder, if you can go in and let us know what you think about this session, so hopefully we can improve for next year. And thanks.